crisis and not ask ourselves, is the entire Middle East physically drawn in a way that supports conflict? And from my perspective, it's absolutely true. And we are at the 100-year anniversary of the Sykes-Picot Agreement that divided the Middle East in a way that had very little to do with people living in the region and everything to do with external geopolitics. And what we've seen, and you've heard about today, is the borders being used as zones of exclusion, with refugees being pressed up against borders, forced to do things that they may not want to do to try to get across the borders, to live in a safe society. And at the same time, we hear about the wonderful work that Kurdish communities are doing to fight the Islamic State and to create safe havens for those in need. And I think it's about time that we raise the question of maybe it's important to reconsider the physical boundaries that currently constitute the Middle East and see this as a potential opportunity to create an infrastructure for sustainable peace in a region that has caused profound violence and difficulties for my entire life. Thank you.
Thank you, Seán. As the last panelist of this discussion, I want to briefly talk about the German example. And the German example is really kind of a case study of what you do with refugees once they get there. Why Germany? Well, the first reason is that in the last year, approximately 1 million refugees came to Germany. In comparison, that's probably twice as many refugees as have come to the United States in the last 10 years. Germany is 1/4 the size of the United States in terms of population. So we have a country here who has opened its doors to refugees, who's struggling to find a process and a procedure of integrating those refugees into the society. There are essentially 3 basic challenges, I think. The first challenge is the process challenge. How do you process that many people at once? And one of the things that the Germans have done is they've hired 3,500 new administrators and about 1,200 new teachers to begin the process of integrating refugees. Also, they're working on trying to streamline the process of deciding whether or not asylum applications are applicable or not. Most of the refugees from war zones are not eligible for asylum. Asylum is very different than refugee status because it allows you to stay in the country for an extended period of time and provide some additional benefits. So trying to decide that has to be streamlined. So first we have the question of the process. Next, how do you distribute refugees within the country? Germany has 16 federal states. What they have come up with is a formula based on general population. The largest state, the states with the most populations, have gotten the most refugees. So Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia have gotten approximately 16% each of the refugee load, and some of the smallest states in Germany have gotten a proportionally smaller number of refugees, allowing the localities and states to at least try to keep up with the process as they're being inundated by refugees from a variety of different places. The other thing you have to realize, of course, is that not all the refugees coming to Germany are Syrians. Of the approximately 1 million refugees coming to Germany, only about 48% are Syrians. The rest are Afghanis, Iraqis, Pakistanis, Eritrea, Yemen, a number of other countries as well. And each of those has a complex set of problems and questions that has to be answered in the application process. So distribution is one of the issues. And then, of course, the main issue in the long term is going to be integration. How do you integrate 1 million people last year and maybe 500,000 or 250,000 this year into a society of 80 million people? The current ruling party, the Christian Democratic Union under Angela Merkel, just a couple of days ago published a position paper which is currently being debated as a legislative attempt to regulate some of these issues and address some of these issues. The title of it in German is Fördern und Fordern, which translated roughly means encourage and demand, but really what it is a listing of rights and responsibilities that refugees should have as they come to Western society. And in that sense, I think it's a model for other countries to potentially follow. I'm not saying that it's end-all, be-all, but nevertheless, it offers some interesting perspectives. Briefly, there is a strategic portion to the paper which talks about some broader goals first are among the things to order the migration, protect borders, and stop traffickers. Those are important. To combat the causes of migration, although that comes in along with Michael's comments, that's a difficult thing to do. To direct the migration and more quickly send asylum seekers that aren't eligible back to their home countries, and then of course to attain a fair distribution of refugees in Europe. The challenge, of course, is that a number of states have refused to take refugees in Europe or have limited numbers. The Dublin Agreement that had been developed to order this kind of thing is out the window, and essentially anybody who wants to take refugees can at the numbers that they want to. The Germans are arguing that everybody has to do their fair share of the state. Among some of the things in this proposal are the potential threat of reductions. If refugees refuse to integrate into society, that is, they refuse to take the basic language course, which is required, or which will be required, and an integration course, their subsidies and job placement opportunities will be limited. The idea is, if you're going to be here, there are a certain set of rules and standards that you have to follow, and that's being taught, or is proposed to be taught very early in the immigration process. In fact, refugees are supposed to get a packet down the road when they first come to Germany. These are our values and norms, these are our laws, these are the things we follow by along the way, and that begins the process then of language introduction,